Hey guys, Waterfowler41 here, and in today's video we are going to be installing the Rockstar toe flap on my 2020 Ram Rebel. So this toe flap, unlike the hitch mounted ones, this one actually uses a couple custom brackets to mount the flap up underneath the truck to get it closer to the rear of the tires so it's stopping any of the crap from kicking off the tires. So why did I go with this? In the summer, we do a lot of boating, a lot of jet skiing, and we're constantly moving the boats and everything around. And if you've ever towed any sort of fiberglass part with mud tires or any sort of all-terrain tires, you know that these tires are capable of kicking up a whole lot of road crap, a lot of rocks and everything. And if you're towing jet skis, boats, or whatever, that's a lot of fiberglass that's exposed to that. And every so often, a rock will kick up, hit that boat, and it's a costly fix. And when you try to do it yourself, which I have tried to do, it just does not turn out as well as professionals. So we're going to install this to protect any of the boats and jet skis that we're going to be towing. Now, the other reason I like this one is because it's very simple. So just with these two brackets, the toe flap itself can move from truck to truck. So this is one of 5 5th-gen trucks in our family. And we do a lot of towing, everything from boats, jet skis, motorcycles, everything. So if I don't need the toe flap and my uncle or my dad needs it, we could definitely pop this thing off the back of my truck and install it on their truck. It's literally 2 13mm bolts and that's it. So let's talk about what comes in the kit. Obviously you get the toe flap, and the toe flap comes in 2 pieces. You basically install a bar, so this little bar right here slides in this aluminum channel here, and that's how the 2 pieces hold together. So then the rest of the hardware. So you have the brackets, which allow the flap itself to mount to the underside of the bumper on the truck. And then you have these little special clamps here. Now, when you install this on the truck, it's basically 2 parts. So you have the fixed brackets that are bolted onto the truck, so that's these guys. And then with these brackets right here, those are what holds the flap to the brackets. But it's nice because what they allow you to do is pull this flap off if you don't need it, because you'll basically mount that toe flap to the bracket with the cotter pins. So what we're going to do here first is we're going to go ahead and install the brackets underneath the truck. Then we're going to get into installing the actual flap itself. A little bit more complicated on this truck versus a stock truck because I have that Corsa exhaust system. So if you notice here, because of how far this flap fits up underneath the truck, you have these cutouts, and these cutouts are designed for the factory exhaust. So what we're going to end up having to do is probably expand these about 1 inch around the outside to account for the extra width of the Corsa exhaust tips. Once we get there, I'll show you what I mean, but basically what we're going to do now is install these guys so we know how far back the flap sits. That way we can start measuring and figuring out how to accommodate the larger exhaust tips here. Again, it's just going to basically be tin snips to cut this. This is aluminum. But as far as finish, this is the same finish that my tonneau cover has. So it looks pretty sweet. So it's got the nice durable look to it. It's got that little diamond plate effect to it as well. So let's get going with installing this guy on the truck. All right, so we are up underneath the truck, and I just wanted to show you where these brackets install. So we are on the driver's side. Here's my hitch. Here's my Corsa exhaust tip. And what we're going to do is there's a sideways bolt here. There's a up and down one here, and then the far edge. We're going to undo this middle bolt, and that is where our bracket is going to sit on top. So by undoing that bolt there, we're just going to basically pull that bolt off and then thread it through this bracket, the hole in the bracket here, and then reinstall it. That way we have a place to hold our toe flap. Then from there, that will give us an idea of where that toe flap's going to sit underneath the truck, so I can figure out how much I need to cut off of that exhaust cutout to fit the larger exhaust tips that I have. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to install this bracket on the back of the flap itself. And once you install this bracket, that's where you then can hang the flap itself on the brackets that we just installed underneath the truck. So this basically slips on behind the truck, or behind the flap, and then you have a square hole. You just line those up, and then the front of the bracket itself sticks through the flap, and that's how you install it on the brackets you just installed underneath the truck. Then you take your supplied hardware. We're going to pop this guy through here like that, and that goes through the bracket. Use a bolt, hold it on the other side. I'll need 2 hands to do that, so we'll get that in a second. Then after we install the bracket here, we are going to go ahead and cut the factory exhaust holes out. Again, these are sized to fit the factory exhaust tips. Since my truck and really any truck in my family doesn't have factory exhaust anymore, we're going to cut out the factory, and then we're going to cut it a little bit more. So I'm going to use tin snips, and hopefully it's easy to cut this stuff, but we'll take our time. And basically what I think I'm going to end up doing is cutting 1 inch over all the way around this thing. And I got enough room to go down pretty significantly here, and I think that will give us enough room to clear the Corsa exhaust tips. All right, so I have both of the mud flap sides prepared for my test fit, and then to figure out how much I need to trim off there. So this is what pops off of the flap once we install the bracket, and then you have 3 little pieces that you cut. So you cut here, and then just take the whole piece itself and just bend it, and the metal fatigue and eventually just snap right off. So we have our factory cut out. Again, if you have factory exhaust, this is where you finish up with the modifications, and then you're good to go to install it once you get these guys spliced into each other, so using that bracket there. But since I have a larger exhaust, I need to cut it. The other thing I need to do is I need to go out and pick up a set of curved tin snips so I can make a nice circular cut. I don't want to make a square cut here because I think that'll look a little tacky, so I want to make it look as nice as possible. So I'm going to run out and grab a set of curved tin snips so that when I cut this, I could basically follow this contour. So all right, we got our tin snips, and we're ready to go to start modifying these guys so they will fit around the Corsa exhaust tips. So I went ahead and cut the driver's side. I figured out what I need to do, so I want to show you what I did using the passenger side toe flap. So here's our factory exhaust cutout. Basically what we need to do is extend this or offset this edge by 1 inch all the way around. So rather than cut on the front of it, we're going to cut on the back of it where the surface is relatively smooth. So I put some tape on there, and then I measure 1 inch all the way around, and then basically just connected the dots. So now what I'm going to do is use some tin snips to just cut this guy. It's a little difficult to cut this stuff, but it's because it's so durable. But once you start getting going, and if you have the right tin snips, so make sure you use one that can make tight turns so you can get the bottom here, then you should be in good shape. So we're going to cut a 1 inch offset out of this one because that's what we have on our driver's side. I'll get everything put together, we'll get it mocked up on the truck, and we'll figure out what else we need to do in order to make this fit. I think we should be in good shape. We could always bend those brackets just a little bit, but I think with this 1 inch cut we should be all right and make plenty of clearance around the Corsa exhaust. All right, so I have both sides cut to fit the exhaust tips through the openings there. They are roughly cut right now. I'm probably gonna have to do some minor adjustments once I get this whole assembly put together. I was basically sizing everything up one at a time, so I did the driver's side, then I did the passenger side. So once I put them together, that'll give me a real kind of a good sense of where this toe flap's gonna land. That way I can make the final adjustments. Then what I'm ultimately gonna do is go get some door edge trim and just throw it in here. That way I'm not gonna scratch my exhaust tips. Very cheap insurance on that guy. So next thing we're gonna do is attach these two sides together, and it's super simple. So behind the mud flap, or behind the toe flap, is this aluminum channel there. So in the bottom of the channel, you're gonna take this bar and you're gonna slide it in there, and then you're gonna line up this hole with the hole through the flap itself, and then right into this piece of metal. And then they give you self-tapping screws that you're basically just gonna sink right through here into the bar. And that's how you basically splice or butt these two pieces together. So I'm gonna go ahead and install this bar into each side, and then we'll get this guy attached, and then I'll show you how easy it is to get this flap installed on the truck with the cotter pins that they give you. All right, so now that we have our mud flap put together, and then we went ahead and installed those little rubber isolators on the brackets themselves, it's time to hang it. So they give you some cotter pins here. So super simple, a bit bulky. But we're basically gonna lift this guy up, and it's gonna go in front of your spare tire. So all right, so once we get the mud flap up on one of the brackets, just go ahead and throw that cotter pin on here. We'll go over to the other side here. Throw that on there. So I left the brackets in there pretty loose so I could adjust it side by side because I want to give myself some clearance on the bumper here. So it looks like I'm clearing the exhaust pretty good. Clearing the spare tire, clearing this exhaust pipe pretty good. This side needs to come down just a smidge. So that's it. All right, we are completely installed. I got a little minor adjustments to make. Just want to make sure side to side this guy is centered on the truck, but looking pretty sweet. And like I said, I'm gonna grab some door edge trim and just basically line the edge of the cutout that I made for the exhaust. That way I'm not gonna scratch my exhaust tips. but this thing is super sweet. Alright guys, I just wanted to show you with the toe flap off the truck what I did as far as finishing up the edges around the cutouts that I made. So if you remember, I had to cut out an extra inch around each of the exhaust cutouts so I could clear the Corsa exhaust tips. So there's the Corsa tip. So again, I had to make each opening on each side a little bit larger. So to give it a nice finished look, I went ahead and picked up some door edge trim guards. So it's like this rubber stuff with some metal encapsulated inside of it. And you basically just push it up against the edge and it gives it a nice clean look. So there's that side. And there is the passenger side. So real quick overview as far as the assembly of the toe flap. Again, it comes in two pieces. So one piece here, one piece here. There's a bar that slips in between, or slips into the aluminum channel on the back. You slip that bar in there, and then you have two self-tapping bolts. You just drive these guys right down into the bar, then you're good to go here. Then you need to install the brackets. These brackets fit in through the rear of the toe flap with a bolt and nut. There's a square hole here. You just drop the bolt in there, tighten a nut down on the back of it. Then you need to take these little rubber isolators here. So the rubber isolators are there so that when you do hang this up underneath the bracket that's mounted on the truck, this thing isn't rattling all over the place. So once you guys get that one installed, so you got a rubber insulator there, you also have one on this side, then it's as simple as installing the actual brackets on the truck. So there's 3 bolts that hold the inside edge of this little plastic trim piece in there. You're going to loosen up the middle one with a 13mm wrench and then go ahead and install those brackets. So we got one on the driver's, or one on the passenger side and then one on the driver's side. And then it's as simple as basically just hanging that mud flap. It mounts to the rear of that bracket right on there, and we'll take a look at that in a second, what removal and install looks like. But no tools are needed outside of installing that bracket. So 13mm wrench to install that guy. I believe a 13 and 15mm wrenches are needed to install this guy, or at least assemble the toe flap. But after it's assembled, you just leave it all in one piece, and then to add it or remove it from the truck, you just use these spring-loaded cotter pins to pop them on and off the truck. So if you are in the market for a toe flap, this is definitely one I would suggest looking at because of how it mounts. It looks really nice up underneath the truck. I'll post some pictures to my Instagram. They also have some mud flaps that match the same design, so it does look pretty sweet. I am eventually going to be ditching these mud flaps on the truck. They are rubbing quite a bit on the front after my new lift kit, so once I remove these guys, I'm definitely going to want to have that toe flap there for when we're towing the boats and jet skis around. So with that said, that is how you install, or that's how you assemble, install, and remove this guy. So when you're towing your valuables behind you, you're not throwing it or painting it with a bunch of rocks on the road. So let's take a look at what the quick install and quick removal looks like, and then we'll close this one out. Thank you very much.